big thanks, you guys. I know like some people left and then other people are coming back, and we're so excited to have everyone here who's here. And I was just talking you up Laura, about giving everyone the link to Nourish Charlotte and what you do with Nourish Charlotte and what you do with coaching. So give that, I want everyone now, they kind of they know, like, okay, you're a coach and you're a co-founder of this menu, food delivery, local, organic, healthy food service company in Charlotte.
Right.
So if you could like back us up to how you got into coaching and then how you got into Nourish Charlotte. I know that's probably a long story, but anything important to share? Oh, and just to let everyone, all the viewers know, if you want to submit a question, you'll see it on your screen. Please do so as we're talking, and then we're going to take breaks sporadically as the questions come in order to kind of answer them. I don't know, probably every like 10, 15 minutes, something like that. So feel free to add your questions as we're talking, and we'll pull them on up the screen at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Okay, so where do you want me to start?
Start with how you got into coaching, maybe where you were and where that light bulb moment is, and what happened to bring you to that direction.
Okay, so how long do we have? I was an English major in college and graduated having pretty much no clue what I wanted to do. Literally all I knew was that I did not want to teach high school English. That's the full extent of what I knew at the time about what my life was going to look like, was that I was not going to be a high school English teacher. So I was waitressing, supervising at a restaurant, just kind of like, okay, and I'm just going to hang out here and wait until I get further information from my gut or the universe or whatever. Ended up bouncing down to Charlotte. I was up in Virginia for college, had a brother and his wife and their 4 small kids had just moved here at the time. And this was like the big city. And so it was just time for Charlotte to start booming. And so I got here in '93 and ended up bouncing right into a job as an administrative assistant at Bank of America, what's now Bank of America. I had no idea what that meant. It was right around the time when the lexicon was changing and they were going from secretary to admin. And I had no idea. I was signing up for that.
Right.
Yeah, I was like, well, here's your ad for what you need, and I can do all these things, so you need to hire me. It was pretty much what I said. And they did. And so anyway, I ended up, long story short there, was in corporate America for probably 8 years or so. Pretty quickly bouncing up the ladder, climbing up the ladder. Actually, not really climbing up the ladder, kind of being nudged up the ladder.
Okay.
I knew pretty quickly in that journey that I was not a corporate girl at heart, and I would not be in corporate America forever. And again, I was like, okay, but I'm here now, and I'm not getting any indication from my gut that it's time to leave. So I'm going to ride this out and see where it goes. And so I was 29 when I lost my dad, and he and I were really, really close. I grew up on a small farm, and he was a 3rd-generation dairy farmer, and really taught me a lot about gave me my whole connection to nature, which is very, very strong, and a real appreciation for like the natural rhythms of the world. And we always had a massive garden and fruit trees, and his whole dream was to be as self-sufficient as we could be, and that was with farm animals as well as gardens and all that stuff. So I grew up in that kind of environment, and then here I was in this corporate world,
right?
You know, however many stories up in these buildings in a city, and it was fascinating, and I learned so much. And yet I knew deep down that wasn't where I was going to be. And so I was just kind of riding it out and riding up the ladder and getting title promotions and raises and finding my way very naturally into roles in communication and associate development and leadership development and process work and facilitation and training, and found that all those things came pretty easily to me, and met some of the most amazing people that are still in my life today. But by the time I was 29, when my dad passed away, it was just a huge wake-up call. Like there was this moment where when I came back from I'd taken a couple weeks off when he passed away, and the first day I came back, I was working for an executive as her business manager, and my entire team, her whole team, was in Dallas, Texas, and I was in Charlotte. And I just said, look, there's no way I'm flying to Dallas coming straight out of my dad's funeral and all that experience. And so I found myself in this interior small conference room. It was like the ugliest conference room you could possibly imagine. You know, ripped old chairs, like hadn't been painted in God knows how many years, you know, and I was sitting in this room and it was an all-day meeting and I had this speakerphone on and, you know, I was like lolled back in my chair just like, oh, somebody kill me. And at one point, I don't know if somebody said something that was particularly like corporate jargon or what, but something happened and I sat up in my chair and I smacked the mute button so they couldn't hear me. And I literally said out loud to the walls, I was like, what the F am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Why am I here? What am I doing? And in my whole 20s, the question about that question of interview question, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, had plagued me because I never knew. I don't know, like, how do I know 5 years from now what job title I'm going to have
I
or
hate
where
that
I want to be?
question. I hate it. I hate it.
But that light bulb moment gave me the gift of like, oh, wait a second. I don't know why it came then, but it did. Like, I might not know exactly where I want to be in 5 years, but I do know the skills that I want to grow. I know where I'm having a lot of fun right now in my work and that I'd love to do more of that. So I might not know the company, I might not know the title, but here's what I do know. If I get to pick, I know that I want to be playing with people. So I grabbed my like planner, my Franklin Covey planner, and ripped out a piece of paper and I just started writing. And meanwhile, all the, you know, corporate stuff's going on and I'm just totally checked out at this point. And so I just started writing about what I wanted to fill my life with more of and what skills I really wanted to grow and where I wanted to challenge myself. So from there, I ended up going to the powers that be and telling them, I literally like volunteered. I said, take me off the ladder. I want to be an individual contributor. I don't want to lead project teams anymore, even though there's some of that really was fun for me. Scaled my hours back to 30 hours a week, so I still got my benefits and started going to grad school.
Okay.
And I swear all this is leading up to answering your question.
No, I love this. I think this is like the most important story ever. So yeah, please.
So I started going back to grad school for English because I thought, well, I knew I didn't want to teach high school English, but college sounded cool because people are kind of there voluntarily, you know, and they're a little bit more mature in their thinking. So I started going down that track and got halfway through the program that I was in, and it was just not doing it for me. I had a 4.0, which was like remarkable. My parents were dancing a jig every time they heard me say that. But I wasn't finding the level of dialogue and discourse that I really wanted. What it did give me was an opportunity to take classes in how to teach college English. I did an internship where I had my own class, which was a blast. And so when I went to my advisor and said, hey, you know, I'm not going to complete this program, she said, well, you know, we did just teach you how to teach English the way we like it taught, and you have enough credits to legally be able to teach as adjunct faculty. Will you come back? Will you do that for us instead?
Amazing how things work out, Laura.
Yeah, so I did, and that ended up being a really cool. So I'd gotten a couple puzzle pieces of what really lit me up when I worked at the bank. One of those things was like teaching some of the Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Effective People work, like helping these corporate wonks who had been there for 30 years look at how are you spending your time? What's most important to you? Wow, look at the gaps, you know. Right. So that kind of stuff just lit me up. Teaching college English, I was able to take these babies, these freshmen who were coming into this whole new world, and my favorite part of it was assigning them writing projects that had them doing self-reflection on what is it like to be in this time of transition. And they loved talking about it, and they loved coming to class and just saying like, oh my God, I went to a party and I was swinging from chandeliers at 2 a.m. I've never done that before. And like, well, let's look at that and let's look at your writing in that. So that was like an interesting, look what, you know, when given the opportunity to play with people in transition, there we go. Like I was just all over it. So then I ended up leaving the bank. It felt really important to me to create more flexibility in my life. I was learning that being my own boss of me and boss of my time was becoming important. I would stand in my little cubicle at the bank with my literally like 7 or 8 floors up with my face pressed against the glass and watch the cars drive by. And I just say, like, what, how,
How are
it's
they
two
out?
o'clock on Tuesday. Yeah, like, where are they going? How do they do
Who's
that? You
out
know,
there?
why
Who's
are they
out
not in a,
there? Right.
yeah, like, why are they not in a cubicle somewhere like I am?
Right.
So I kind of became fascinated with, like, how do I create a life where I get to drive around at 2 o'clock on Tuesday and go to yoga or whatever and still do work that's sustaining. And so I quit the bank and I said, I'm going to come back. I want to come back as a consultant. It's cheaper for you. It gives me more flexibility. So I literally left on a Friday, came back on a Monday, working half the time, making twice the money from home in my pajamas.
Laura, what year was this? When was this? When was this?
I was 30. That was 12 years ago.
Okay.
So,
I just
yeah,
have to point out for a second just kind of the matter of factness that there is with this story, that you kind of like have taken your experiences and your skills along the way. It seemed like you didn't have a tendency to rush through things or find things that aren't there. Like even when you knew you were waiting tables, you were like, okay, well, this feels good right now. Let's just see then, what's in my gut and blah 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 blah.
right.
But when you put those pieces together and you said, oh, I really like teaching. Oh, I really like, working with people on this level. Oh, I like the interaction. Okay, let's take that and then let's go back to HR and tell them, take me off the ladder and this is what I want to do. And they said, great. Then I went to English class and I did this. And then when the English stuff wasn't working out, I told them this isn't working out. This isn't what I want. And they asked me to be adjunct faculty. And like, that was totally cool. Yeah, great. And then I went back to the bank and I said, this is it. And like, how just presenting it and putting out there, and this is what I want. And I think if you know your value and you know your skill set, then this does not have to be like a scary conversation. It's coming at it, and this is just such a coachy thing to say, but it's coming at it from like a very win-win point from both sides. This is where I win, this
Yeah,
is where
and
you win. Like, let's make this mutually beneficial deal.
absolutely. And I will say, I had a mentor at the time who is still in my life, and she's one of the most important people in my life. But she was giving me guidance about that when I was getting ready to leave the bank. She was really, really instrumental. So I um, definitely leaned on that relationship to understand what's the best way to go about this so that it's respectful, and it is a win-win, and to really be, own my value, know that they really valued me as an employee and that I had a lot to give. And then to be able to say, like, hey, if you want me, here are the terms that's going to be under. And I had to be willing to hear no. That was a
Yes,
possibility.
that's
So,
true.
so to continue this long story,
I love it. I love
collecting
it.
puzzle pieces.
I love it.
So I'm collecting puzzle pieces all the way, right? So I did the consulting contracting gig for a couple years, but then I realized, oh, and then in the process there, I'd been dating someone for 5.5 years, and I broke up with him,
Oh, I know
which was a
all
big
about that.
deal.
Okay, yeah, no, I know all
Yeah,
about that. Yeah.
he was very certain that he was going to spend the entire rest of his life in this city. Um, and I might be here for the rest of my life too, but I really wanted to know that I could be with someone who was at least willing to entertain the idea of adventure.
Right,
Um,
right.
so, and there were a lot of other reasons, but that kind of letting go of that was important. Letting go of the corporate world, that really the golden handcuffs thing is so true. I'm sure there are people watching who get that. They were big. I was letting go of a lot of stuff that had anchored me in my 20s. And so so in my early 30s, then I was contracting, making great money for the first time in my life. Had no idea how to manage it, but it was really fun. Um, and yet there came a time when I realized, when I left the bank, when I quit the bank, it felt like such a huge step. But really, when I looked at it, I was doing the same work with the same people, just from home,
Okay.
making more money, which was great. But when I looked at what's part of what frustrated me about that work and that experience was that it was very, very ivory tower. Um, I worked in a bank. I had been an English major. I was doing all this communications training, facilitation, leadership stuff, but I knew that the way that I was spending my life energy was not impacting real people with their feet on the ground, the ones that were walking on the sidewalk that I would look at when I had my face pressed up against the
Right.
wall. And so I just felt this growing need, like, look, I've got this time every day and I'm spending it doing stuff that, if I stay here till I'm 65 and walk out the door, it's going to be like when you're walking down a sandy beach and the water washes over your footprints. Like, there won't be any difference here because I was here. And so at the time then I met my now husband, Robert, who is a very free spirit and pretty anti-authority and irreverent person. And and he had his own business, and we both had enough impetus to shift direction or to just step off of the track we were on, that we decided to close our businesses and travel for a year around the country. So we did, and we converted a school bus.
Oh my God, I love this. I love it.
It was like 2002 that we did that. And we were looking for RVs, but our neighbors were folks who had followed the Grateful Dead for years, and they were like, "Dude, get a school bus. You can make it however you want." We had like kayaks and bikes, and I love to cook, so I wanted like more than 6 inches of counter space, and so we designed it ourselves to meet our needs, and it was just awesome. And so we spent all of 2002 just traveling all over the United States and up into British Columbia, and the puzzle pieces that trip gave me. One was that I had been living in a pretty homogenous world in Charlotte. In the corporate world, everybody dresses the same, you all talk the same, you have your own secret weird corporate language depending on the corporation you're working in, and everybody kind of lives the same. And so one of the puzzle pieces was this. It was like the blinders just got blown off because I was able to see how many different ways that there are to live and be happy. It doesn't make any of them right or wrong. It was just a matter of like choosing and living and being happy. And then
wait, I'm stopping it right there. That's the tweetable. Arwen likes my tweetable. Arwen, write this down. There are many different ways to be happy. Live your life.
Yeah, live and be happy.
To live and be happy. Thank you. I knew I forgot something. Absolutely, 100 million%.
Yeah. So that was puzzle piece number one. Puzzle piece number two was one day we were parked at Zilker Park in Austin, Texas. And the bus was a great conversation starter. People were like, I can't tell you how many times I heard like Partridge Family, ha ha ha, and like, who's in there and can I take a look? And this lady walks up to the bus and she knocked on the door and she's like, can I come in and see? Like, what are you doing? So we're like, come on in. So she sat down at our little dining room table, which had 2 bus seats facing in.
Oh my God, I can't take it.
And she just looked around and she asked us what we were doing and we told her, and she literally just sat there and then her whole being just collapsed. She just, I wish I could do something like that. And I sat down and I was like, well, you can. You just have to decide. You just have to decide and then make all the small decisions that lead up to that big decision happening. Like we're not special people. We're not gifted. We didn't have $1 million. We just decided, and then we figured out what we had to change in our lives so that big decision could come to life. And it was just like yeah, that's how it went. And then the third puzzle piece was we wandered into this little town in the middle of Colorado called Salida. We intended to stay overnight, and this was in late May or mid-May, and ended up within like 2 hours we were just absolutely in love with this little town. We had met amazing people. I had applied for a job. My husband had applied for a job to stay for the summer. So we ended up staying in this little town for the summer. And while we were there, I would walk up and down this main street of this little bitty town, and there was this one storefront that had some little windows. And every time I walked by, what I noticed was that it was floor to ceiling color inside. And I was just so like, what do they do in there? Who is that? What goes on in there? Yeah. And so one day I got brave and I poked my head in the door, and it was a bead shop. And it was right when beading and making jewelry was becoming like the thing. And so I met the very nice woman that owned it, and she helped me learn how to make a bracelet. And I took it back to the bus, and Robert says, he tells a story that like he came back to the bus one day, and I was like, look, honey, I made a bracelet. And he's like, and then 4 days there were 30. Like she couldn't stop.
You found a puzzle piece and you acted like on it. That's what I'm learning too from this
Well,
story. Like, you found something that you love or something that made sense or something that fit, and then you go towards that thing. Seems like.
yeah, and well, and what I realized was that when I went to college, I was either going to be an art major or an English major from the start, and I picked
Mm-hmm.
English.
Mm-hmm.
I had this whole childhood full of color and creating and sculpting and drawing and being imaginative, and I had stayed with some of that creativity, but it was all very brainy creativity on the English route. And so when my hands got a hold of something colorful and tactile, it was like, oh, yes, that, I remember that now. So
Right.
I I felt like my creativity during that year went from it had shriveled to like a raisin when I was in my corporate work, so much so that like I'd pick up a journal and all I could do is write in PowerPoint bullets, you know.
Mm.
And that year, my creativity was like pumped back up to a beautiful grape, you know, like
Right,
it
right,
came to
right,
life again.
right.
So when we got back to Charlotte, um, I had a decision to make, which was, do I follow my fear and go running back to corporate America, into the money, into the paycheck? And I very quickly was like, no, we didn't just spend a year traveling the United States in a converted school bus so that you could come back and go back into corporate America. So I sought out a local bead shop that had just opened, and she ended up hiring me. I was her first employee. I worked there for 2 years. I ended up managing the shop. But the best puzzle piece I got from that was that people would walk in the door, and someone might like drag their friend along with them, right? So the person who wanted to be there would like go around, get what she's getting, and the friend would stand there and be like, oh, this is all so cool. I wish I could do something like this, but I'm not creative. And I would get a hold of them, and
Oh
they would
my
leave an hour
God.
later with some beautiful piece of jewelry they had made. And it was almost more that like the piece that lit me up, that was my favorite thing about those moments, was that they would leave with their shoulders back, with their head held higher, and believing in themselves in a whole different way, like that they were capable of something that they didn't think an hour before that they had been capable of. So that was definitely a puzzle piece. And then I bounced around and tried a couple different things. My husband, so, and this is a Nourish link, my husband and I and another woman started Charlotte's first ever urban CSA, consumer supported agriculture
Oh,
program,
cool.
where,
Okay.
yeah, like I just had this, like we had this friend who was a great gardener, and I knew about gardening from my growing up years, and Robert had loved to garden. And we were all talking one day, and I was like, you know, I'm sure that if there was some place in the city where we could grow stuff, that people would flock to it. And so we were like, shit, let's do it. And we did. So we
I
fed like
love
17
you.
families for a year,
Oh
which
my
was awesome.
God. How did I not know that?
Yeah.
I didn't know about the beads. I didn't know about the trip. I knew about the corporate stuff. But it's just
Yeah.
the other tweetable, follow the puzzle pieces. Follow the puzzle pieces,
Yeah.
right? They're like
Yeah.
never gonna steer
So,
you wrong. And
mhm,
just you could do whatever you want, just decide. I love
yeah.
when you said that earlier. I just have to highlight
Yeah.
that. I think that's what it is too.
Okay. So
So yes,
at this
okay.
point I'm working at the bead shop. I'm running a CSA with two other people. The CSA was only for a year. It definitely tied me down more than I liked. I had to be
Uh-huh.
there in town every single weekend, you know, which was
Mm-hmm.
just felt like, oh, let me out of here.
Mm-hmm.
But it was great, and actually one of our most thriving farmers markets right now in Charlotte is run by a woman who was one of our customers,
Oh.
and she stood around our little farm table at our plot of land talking to my partner in that, saying like, yeah, you know, there's got to be room in Charlotte for a local farmers market that's organic, that you actually talk to the farmers when you go to it. And so
Mm,
now there's this thriving market that's gone through lots of iterations, but I love going there and seeing her and knowing that that
that's where
it
it
got
came
some of
from.
its seeds around our table. Yeah.
Yeah.
So so then in 2005, just because I kind of went crazy for a few minutes, I went back into corporate America and I did a year-long contract. And 24 hours into it, I was standing in the shower on my second day, already completely swallowed up by it,
Uh,
and saying like, "Oh my God, this is why I didn't want to be there in the first place." But it was a good year, and again, I met some amazing people. And by the end of it, they were trying to hire me back, and I had all these really logical reasons for why that was a good idea. Um, and and then I finally just realized, like, I listened to my heart, and I was like, no, 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 oh hell no. um,
oh hell no is always what we want to go away from. But
we
I like that.
wanted.
But it seems like you made the most of that situation, even though you knew the second day. I didn't hear you say like this was a mistake. This went, oh, okay. I've reminded myself why this is the path this is the route that I decided to get off. But you
Yep.
decided, let's meet some people, let's make these connections, let's make the most of this contract, and it didn't seem like it was torturous, which was
Right.
nice
It
of
was
you
a
in that
little bit,
headspace.
yeah, it definitely was torturous, but I was different in it
Uh-huh.
then than I had been
Mm-hmm.
before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was definitely very much at choice about
Mm.
being there.
Mm.
So, so this is, we're actually getting to the end of this really long story, but
Yay! And you guys, send questions. I have no questions yet. That's why I haven't broken. So feel free to
I
ask
haven't stopped to
questions.
take a breath.
But it's a great figuring out what you want to be when you grow up story with a lot of different options in Renaissance. So like, you could talk as
Yeah.
long as you want to with this
Okay.
because
Well,
it
I'm
feeds
almost
into
almost
everything
to
that I preach. So.
me too. I'm almost to present day. So so I ended the corporate gig the very end of 2005, and at the
Mm-hmm.
time, so it was just like a big fat exclamation point that corporate is not where you need to be. But I still didn't know. Like I knew that I had all these puzzle pieces like floating around in the air, but I couldn't see what they added up to, and I just was getting this bigger and bigger sense that I know I've got all this stuff and I know
Right.
it's supposed to add up to something, and why can't I see that picture yet? Um, and at the time then, so Robert and I were not married yet, and
Mm.
we were at a real loggerheads in our relationship that I just didn't know how to traverse. And I had meanwhile been dealing with like we weren't married yet, but we do things in our own way. And so we had been trying to get pregnant for years. I'd been dealing with infertility forever. It felt like I just carried this gray cloud of that around with me everywhere. Every time I talked to my friends, it was part of the conversation somehow. So it just was I was sort of stuck, but not really. I was sort of clear, but not really. I was in a relationship, but in a tough time in that relationship and not sure what to do. And so um, what I ended up doing was realizing that I got to get myself out of here. I have to get out of everything I know. I've got to get out of my own way. I want to get out of how everybody knows me right now and clear my head. And so the only way I knew to do that was to just like somehow get away geographically,
Uh-huh.
but also get out of my own way in being of service to somebody else. And so I found this great organization that I can't think of the name of right now. It was kind of like a middle organization where if you want to go volunteer, be on like a volunteer vacation, they are connected to places around the world that run on volunteer labor. So I ended up going to literally the other side of the globe. I went to Thailand at a wildlife rescue center and volunteered there for 6 weeks by myself. And it was the best thing I could have done.
Mm.
I met everybody who met me only knew, it was like they knew me because of how I showed up and
Right.
who I was. And so I got to see myself reflected in them, which was cool, gave me really good information. And I had to stand on my own 2 feet. I had to fend for myself. And in my relationship with Robert at the time, I had gotten really enmeshed. And so I'd kind of lost that sense of my own strength and my own core identity. And then I got to be of service and help these amazing animals that had all been rescued, like monkeys and bears and elephants and all this cool stuff. So it was just like I was learning and it was just soaking in this new culture. And then Robert came and met me there, and we traveled together for almost a month, which was, outside of everything we knew together, and we kind of had to be a team and figure things out. And so it was totally neutral territory adventure, and it was really great. But part of what I wanted to get from that time, especially when I was by myself, was just to literally go with the question of, okay, what is it? Like, what's the picture? What does all this add up to? And one day, it sounds so cliche and stupid, but I was literally sitting on my bed. My roommate was gone, and I wasn't really meditating, but I was just kind of sitting, trying to be really still and open with this question. And it was like someone opened the top of my head, dropped the word psychology in, and closed my head up again.
Oh,
And
man.
I was
Yeah.
sat there like, wait, what? It worked! Oh my god! And I was so excited. And I was like, I can do something with that. And so when we got back, I immediately started like pounding the internet looking at MA PhD programs in psychology. I was like, I'm going to get my doctorate and I'm going to counsel people and blah, 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 and found that there were no APA accredited programs anywhere around Charlotte. And so my gut, like, again, like gut check time was like, nope, it's not, like, uprooting and moving is not the right thing right now.
Right.
I was like, okay, well, how about MSW programs and social work programs? And so I went around, informational interviewed with a bunch of people, and I started looking at all the programs around here. And what I found myself doing was getting really excited about what I could do on the other end of the 2 years of schooling.
Right.
Not so excited about the 2 years in between. And so I realized, like, you know, there are angels on earth who help victims of abuse and who work in the prison systems and whatever, but that's not me. That's not my jam this time around. And so,
amen and hallelujah.
Yeah, and so all along, I had heard this thing about coaching. People had been mentioning, like, well, have you ever looked at coaching? And this was like 2006, right? I was like, what the hell? I don't even know what that is. Like, what are you talking about? Football? I don't know. And so I got to that point, and I was like, well, I guess I could look up this thing called coaching, and started Googling coaching and started seeing people's websites, and all the puzzle pieces just
came together.
I was like, oh my God, I could do that and get paid? Like, of course I could do that. And all of my people around me were like, of course you're a coach. Go do it. Yeah. And so I did. And then through this really amazing synchronistic serendipitous route, I found the Coaches Training Institute, which ended up being, I just jumped in with both feet, and it was like my program and my people, and I haven't looked back since. And that was, I think I started my classes like in March of 2006. So 7 years later.
Fabulous. I just.
So now I'll take a breath.
Yeah, take a breath. And we have a really fantastic question from Teresa that I'm going to put on the screen. And then we'll spend the rest of the time also kind of talking about Nourish and how you balance these two careers. But I have to point out, and this is like you were coaching yourself before you were even like a coach technically. But to point out, when you're in the mindset and you have the belief that there's an answer out there, you didn't let the psychology research that led you to, oh, there aren't any of these types of programs in my area, to, well, you know what, that psychology, well, now it's over. Now, obviously, that's not the right thing. And so what the hell am I going to do now? Instead, it was, okay, well, let's look at social work. Oh, let's look. And then you went and did the informational interviews. Okay, let's not jump in. Let's see what it is. Oh, I'm not going to like this schooling. What could I do that has, less schooling or a different type of schooling that I could do the same type of work? When you're in that mindset, there's always going to be an answer.
Yeah. Always. And that's what I tell, like I've said so many times over and over about, like, when people, and I know you've probably heard this, when people are looking for a new career move or the next thing in their life, like there tends to be this desire to put everything on that, like it has to be the thing.
Yes.
And what's been true for me is that when I really listen, it's like a light shines on what's the next right step. Just take the next right step. And then after that, take the next right step. And then so my goal is to get to the end of my life and turn around and see a million steps, but a lit path through all of them that was my right path. So that's what I'm up to.
I'm getting the chills. And I think when that's your MO and that's your plan and that's what you're following, it doesn't, I know this is hard for us creative Renaissance soul type people. We get hung up on that 5-year plan, but I don't have a 5-year plan, or I don't know where this is all leading and I need it to lead somewhere. But instead, if you just focus on, I'm following my puzzle pieces, I'm taking action, I'm taking one right step and another right step. Even when you went back to school to teach English, and that wasn't the right program for you, you didn't take that as, I failed. Oh, I failed. Oh, this was all worthless. I just wasted the last whatever year or two of my life. Like, what am I going to do now? Instead, it was like, oh, no, this was good for these reasons. I'm glad that I did this. And okay, now let's let them know what's going on. And then that created a whole new opportunity, which was, a very, very positive thing for you. So I think I'm talking about that too, just believing in yourself, believing it could happen, believing that there is an answer. It might not be the one that you're looking at right in front of you, but if you just keep on that path, it's there.
and somewhere in my early 20s, and I don't know where this came from or how I landed on it, but I decided that, in coaching, we work with perspectives a lot and the power of perspective. I decided that I was going to hold this perspective on for myself in my life, that whatever decision I'm making, I made that decision with the best information I had at the time. And so therefore, I just stopped believing in mistakes, really. I know that might sound weird, but the only way that I can fail is if I stop learning from what happens.
If you stop seeing them as mistakes, then they're only things to learn from. And then
and it might be kicking the ass, really hard lessons, but otherwise, the only other alternative I can see is to either go numb or to be a victim of circumstances. And I'm not up for either of those.
And you know what? Going back to what you said earlier, you just have to choose. You just have to make that decision, and we all have that decision to make. And the woman on the bus could have decided that she was going to be the victim, and there's no way that she could have this life. And instead,
she did something.
I know. I wish that we could call her and be like, "What did you do? Did you find your own bus?" But then, that's up to the individual and the choice that they want to make. So.
So what's the question we've got?
Okay, this is a question from Teresa. It says, how did you deal with leaving the paycheck and the prestige of a corporate job? Obviously, you still need money. Did you have to change your lifestyle to spend less?
Yes. That's a great question.
We're not pulling any punches. Yeah.
Yeah, it's perfect. So when I left, when I quit consulting, I was making six figures, and I think what was happening was I had just gotten to the point where what was missing in my life became more important than some of the things I had. The pieces of my heart and my soul and my spirit that were not being nurtured by a six-figure paycheck per se were getting louder than the part of me that wanted more stuff or that wanted to live in a big fabulous house, etc. So yeah, it was hard to leave in some ways, but when I left the first time, the prospect of this year-long adventure was like, are you kidding? I would give you like 9/10 of my paycheck for that. And the other thing is that we spent 6 months preparing for that trip. And so part of what that preparation was saving money like crazy, was paying down any debt that we had, paying off credit cards, paying off cars. I sold my car, just getting in a really good place financially so that our financial obligations over that year of travel were very minimal. My husband's son ended up living in our house while we were gone. He was in school, and so he kept the lights on, he paid the bills, we sent him money every month, and we had a cell phone, I think. We had one cell phone between us that we shared. We had, changed our health insurance plans to be high deductible, low cost health insurance. So we were diligent about getting to a point where we could leave knowing that our obligations were going to be low. And so when we came back, they were still low. And that was part of the choices that we had was really maintaining a low financial need lifestyle for a while. So yeah, and I will tell you, when we first came back to Charlotte, I got a job at a coffee shop just because I needed something to do and I wanted a little stream of income coming in. This was before I went to the bead shop, and I had an identity crisis for a while, because when I had left, I was this kind of hot shit, 6 figures, consultant, high demand, blah, blah, blah person. And when I came back, I wasn't really sure who I was. And so I would be in these short conversations at the counter at Caribou Coffee with these people who were making 6 figures and whatever. And I noticed this tendency that I had to slip into conversation that, oh yeah, I've been where you are. Yeah, I've been in that corporate world, and yeah, I was vice president. Yeah. And there was this part of me going like, what are you doing? That sounds so stupid. Just shut up. Like, they don't care. But I was like, I had to validate myself in some way. So yeah, it was ego. For my ego, it was a hard transition for a little while. But I had to do some really hard thinking about like, yeah, I'm saying no to that path What
Mm-hmm.
am I saying yes to? And being really clear what I was saying yes to, and that the yeses were coming from like right in here.
Tweetable, tweetable, tweetable. I'm saying no to that path. What am I saying yes to? I think to the prestige place, and I talk about this with my clients all the time, especially around the dreaded question, which is just the question of like, so what do you do? When we're at that kind of place, that's when we kind of panic, or when we're, we might be in that six-figure job and it makes us so unhappy we don't even want to talk about it. And I think we assume that people think, oh, if I say I'm the vice president of this bank, or I'm this, financial consultant, that's really prestigious and people are gonna, be envious of that, and that's something to say. I could also argue that if you say, oh, I actually just gave notice at my corporate job and spent a year in a converted school bus traveling around America, people are going to like also be really envious of that. That's something that people go, oh my God, how could you do this? I can't do that. And so I think we need to let our assumptions kind of not wash away a little bit and be able to say, you know what, people are just as envious of those things, or that could sound just as prestigious as I'm vice president of a bank or I'm a financial consultant, depending on who you're talking to, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm going to put this question up from Jennifer right now. Jennifer said, what did or does your husband do where were you both free to travel?
He he and still owns his own heating and air conditioning company.
Oh, cool.
At the time, he had like a big building and lots of guys and lots of trucks. And right around the time I met him, he was realizing that that level of business was not what made him happy. And so he had scaled all the way back just to him and a truck.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, yeah, so he was very free to come and go as he pleased throughout the day. And he was able just to tell all his people like, hey, as of this date, I'm not going to be available for a year. And when he came back, he started calling it all back up again, and he's still in business and now has an employee, and so he's still doing that.
So that's just like, where are your values and where are your boundaries and what's going to make you happy.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. Okay, let's talk about Nourish, Charlotte, because we need to talk about that. So give us, oh, wait, first off, are you free for an extra like 5 or 10 minutes after the half hour? Or do we have
Probably
to
an extra
stop and?
5.
Okay, perfect. Just so we have it. So give us like the kind of shortish version on how you found your way to Nourish and what that was like
Well, that's a much
launching.
shorter story.
Okay, good, good,
That's a
good.
much shorter story. Thank you.
Good, good.
So all throughout my 30s, wherever I lived, I was very focused on like I need a patch of sun. I don't care if I
Mhm.
grow one pepper plant in a pot, like I have to be growing something. And that was just a real holdover from my childhood and realizing what my core values were and how being close to the dirt and growing something myself and all of that still really being an important part of my life. So Robert and I had this garden at our old house, and we would every year till up more and more of our lawn for more and more garden.
Uh-huh.
And over the years, as I was coaching, right when I started coaching, I met this wonderful woman named Katie, and we became good friends. And a couple of years ago, she said to me one day, you talk about 3 things whenever we're together. You talk about 3 things. You talk about Robert and your life with him. You talk about coaching, and you talk about food.
Mm.
And I meanwhile had been on like this 10-year journey of learning how to cook and growing more and more garden and really being I have a big family and I'm the youngest of 7, and there's a lot of heart disease and a lot of high cholesterol. And so I've watched my older siblings and my parents and grandparents really struggle with that, and thankfully grew up in a time when like the low fat craze of the 90s and like all this kind of stuff about like, wait, we can actually do something about that if we choose differently than perhaps we've chosen for the past couple generations. So I kind of dubbed myself the prevention test case. And
Uh-huh.
so we got really fascinated about Cooking Light magazine was like my Bible, and like how
Mm.
do I cook in a way that's amazingly delicious, but that actually is not gonna harm me. And so when my friend Katie said that, it was just a funny little thing. And then I had started bartering actually with a therapist couple that Robert and I saw for a while. They were just amazing people. We started bartering some of our therapy for me cooking for them because they were very
Oh,
busy
cool.
and I would drop off these meals. And he said to me one day, he said, you could make a living doing this. He's like, we take your food places and people are like, what? Where did you get that? What is that? How do I get some of that? And I was like, oh, no, 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 I'm coaching. I'm a coach. That's what I
Right.
do. I'm not a cook. Blah, blah, blah. So anyway, it just, that was a little puzzle piece. And it
Mm.
kind of kept tapping me on the shoulder. And about a year and a half ago, I did a cleanse with a friend of mine. And it was a 3-week cleanse that's in the back of the book, Crazy Sexy Diet, which I highly,
Uh-huh.
highly, highly recommend. Um, and while we were doing this cleanse, it wasn't a radical change for me to eat the way that the cleanse depicted because I had already cut wheat, sugar, and dairy out of my diet because I have arthritis and I wanted to go on this anti-inflammatory diet. So a lot of the changes that we had to make weren't drastic for me. They were somewhat drastic for her, but the most important thing was that she just struggled so much with making the time to plan out her meals days in advance, to go to the grocery store on the weekends, to chop all her vegetables, so that Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, when she came home famished at the end of a long day at her corporate job, that she could reach in the refrigerator and have something ready to
Mm.
grab so that she wouldn't be tempted by all the other crap that our food system puts in front of us that's easy, but that's killing us.
Right,
Um,
right.
say like nobody ever died from eating too many vegetables. um,
True.
so I noticed that and it really made me sad for her and it made me mad. And I knew that like the food system that we're in is really kind of messed up given how much we know about prevention now and like why do we know all this but then the food system that we're in predominantly continues to feed us crap that's killing us.
Well, and
And so I
mislabels
stopped
things
around.
and misleads us, and yeah, I mean that could be a whole nother talk, but yeah.
So I stomped around for a couple months going like, somebody really needs to do something about that. Like it should be as easy for us to get our hands on really healthy, like life force enlivening foods as it is to reach in and grab something out of the freezer that would deplete my life force. And
Mm-hmm.
so then one day I was like, oh, if I were coaching me, I would
Uh-huh.
probably say I was someone who could do something about that. So so long story short, I started vetting the idea. I kind of sketched out like how I thought something like that could work, and I started vetting the idea with some really smart business people that I knew and someone who had owned a catering company, and just getting their feedback on, do you think this is a viable business idea? Could I make any money doing this? Is
Mm-hmm.
it needed? Would people go for it? And everybody to a person was like, yes, go, yes, go. And a couple of them gave me the great idea to do a pilot, just kind of
Mm.
behind the scenes, under the radar. So I did that. And in the midst of the pilot, realized I could do the food part of this, but that part of this is kicking my ass. And so it
Uh-huh.
was just took all my energy. And what I really love to do is, there's the product of the food, but there's the service all the way around it. And the
Mm.
service is my playground, like getting to play with
Ah.
people on our Facebook page and, the customer communication, all that corporate stuff that I got so good at back in the day was coming back and the creativity of that. And so literally within 48 hours of realizing that, my husband walks in the door one night and says, I put a hood in over a range for this woman today. She's a vegan personal chef, and she's kind of looking for something different. She's looking for a bigger way to like get her food out there. And
Shut
so I
up!
met her.
Shut up! She
Yeah.
fell into your lap. Fell right into your
Yep.
lap.
And so we met, and yeah, I kind of brought the bones of the idea and what we had learned in this pilot. And over that winter, last winter, she and I and another friend who was helping me with the pilot met and just really continued to vet the idea and brainstorm and brainstorm and brainstorm and meet people and talk to people and figure out how to do it. And we launched in April, and so Julia is we're 50-50 business partners in Nourish. She's the chef, so she's the brilliance behind all the food, and I do all the fulfillment and customer service
Mm.
around it. And yeah, and it's been like having a tiger by the tail since day one. We sell out in like 3 hours. We had to move to a new kitchen like 6 months before we expected to, so we had more space. We've got a staff of 7 people plus us, and we're looking to double our volume this year. So it's good.
I was talking while you were having the sound issues and coming on, and I gave everyone the link. It's nourishcharlotte.com for those who are just joining us. And it says on the menu page, if you don't see a menu, it's because it's sold out. And I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a menu. I don't think I've ever seen a menu. Like I've seen like maybe sample menus. I know the type of food that you make, but
Mhm.
it seems to just be the biggest success. So I have to ask before we wrap up, because I need
Mhm.
to know this. Um, how do you balance these two businesses without your head exploding? You still have your head right on your body.
I still have it. It's
You
here.
still have it. It's still there.
That has been a real challenge this year. I'll tell you. I mean, I didn't go into Nourish because I wanted to get out of coaching.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't at a point where I was like, oh, I've got to, this has been fun, but I've got to figure out something else to do. Here's my cat, Kevin.
Oh,
He just came up on my lap. So that became a real conundrum mid-year when it became clear that Nourish needed more of me and
hi.
Julia needs more of me because I coach every other week, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and part of Friday, and so it became clear that something's got to give here. Like I was just not having any free time, and I mean, I think that's actually something I'm curious about and that I'm staying curious about is that I actually have never seen any business resources for a business in our predicament, which is that we say go and it's like a tiger by the tail the whole time. Like, how do you manage that? There's tons of resources for businesses that are struggling, or that need to attract more
Right.
business.
Right.
But, I know we're not the only ones. So anyway, maybe I'll
Time management
figure that out.
people, this is what we need. Right. Time management people. New product for you. Service. Yeah.
So it's been a tough year, and Julia and I have both like really struggled with exhaustion and kind of burning the candle at both ends. And but what has continued to fuel us is the amount of feedback we get from these people who are just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And our Facebook page lights up every week, and it just the meaningfulness of it provides extra juice for the journey, and that's everything. And I work really hard to make sure that our staff, who works so hard and such long hours, I like at least once a month I'll put in their paychecks a page that's just full of the glowing feedback from our Facebook page and from our emails and from our voicemails that we get from people, just so they stay connected to why we're doing this, what we are changing people's lives for the better, and that's why we're in it and what makes the long days worth it. And so we're working with a business coach now. We just contracted with a business coach, and she's going to help us really look for efficiencies. I've scaled my coaching practice back a little bit. Still looking. I've got space for a couple more clients. So if anybody out there wants some coaching.
Yay. Oh, wait, give us your coaching link because I always go to the wrong place. Give us your coaching URL.
LifeLeadershipCentral.com.
LifeLeadershipCentral.com. Fabulous.
Yeah. So we're in the process of learning where we can create efficiencies to ease up the pressure a little bit, and then look at how we expand throughout the rest of the year in a really smart way that will provide more financial abundance and even more economies of scale, and most importantly, help us feed more people. So.
Come to Brooklyn. Come to Brooklyn. Hurry.
That's our plan. Expansion plans.
Hurry.
10 years from now.
That would be great. Come quicker. Come quicker. We'll be here. Before we wrap up, I want to make sure you see this because Cassandra put this so beautifully. When I'm really, I know, I'm so excited that you're here. What I'm really walking away with is that Laura is proof that synchronicity works. She is so open to the goodness the universe is constantly dishing out.
You got to watch for it. That's what I lead my life in a way that kind of my philosophy for how to move forward is listen to my gut, take a step forward, and watch for what happens next. If doors open, I know I'm on the right track, and I keep going. If doors close or stay closed, then I maybe haven't checked my gut deeply enough, and I go back and do another one, and what's the next right step? So if it's the next right step, the doors will fly open. For sure. It doesn't mean you're not working hard, but the path will be open for sure.
We're ending it there. We're ending it there. You guys go visit Laura at lifeleadershipcentral.com and/or nourishcharlotte.com. Come visit me at whenIgrowupcoach.com. Yeah, come see us on Facebook, see us on Twitter, blah, blah, blah. I'll be back here on Spreecast in 2 weeks to chat with, I think, Tracy Matthews, who's a jewelry designer and a yoga teacher. Making the money, making it happen. Laura, if you want to write a memoir, just know that I'm the first one to buy it. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your story, your lessons, the puzzle pieces. I have been taking notes myself. That's what we're talking about. And I'm walking away from so much, and so I know everyone else is. So thank you.
Good.
Thank you
And I'm
for
happy
being
if
here.
anybody has any like further questions later, whatever, just reach out. I'm so happy to
Fab.
talk about this stuff all day.
You're wonderful. Thank you. And thank you guys for being here and watching. Bye, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
It was so fun. Thank you.
Yay.